Hi everyone, I'm Arfat from BuilderAddon. In this video, I'll be giving you a tour of BuilderAddon for Oxygen. Let's start with one of its most obvious feature, which is this one-click navigation. In Oxygen, every time you want to go to an advanced editing page, you go to the Advanced tab first and then go to that editing page. And then if you want to go to another advanced editing page, you go to the Advanced tab again and then go to that editing page. But with this one-click navigation, you can go to your advanced editing pages without going through those annoying extra clicks. And if in any of these pages you make any style adjustments, it will give you this indication. So you will know that this page has some styles that has been modified. I'll reset the style, and then for the next feature, we have auto refresh. So if I go to the exit menu, you will see a new option here called preview. If I click on it, it will open up the page in a new tab. And every time I save this page, this tab will auto refresh. So if I say change the background color of this section to something like a red and then save this page, then you will see that this tab has auto refreshed. Now I'll go back and remove the background color. And for the next feature, we have tag styles. For that, I'll go to the settings panel and global styles. Here you will see some new tabs like this H1 to H6 tabs, the root tab and the body tab. I'll talk more about these H1 to H6 tabs later with all other heading features. For now, let's talk about the root selector and the body selector. If I click on the root selector, then it will open up the advanced editor of the root selector. And one thing special about the root selector is its font size. So if I go to the typography tab and in its font size, whatever value I put in here will be equivalent to 1 rem. So if I put 20 in here, then 1 rem will equal to 20 pixel now. So if I now go to this heading and change its font size unit to rem and set its value to 1, then this heading will now be 20 pixel. Let me unset the zoom so that you can see it clearly, and if I set it to 2, then it will be now 40 pixel. I'll remove it and go back to the root selector, and in the typography tab, instead of using it as a pixel value, you can also give it a percent value. So here you can set something like 62.5% for your rem to be equivalent to 10 pixel. Then another thing special about the root selector is that you can set all your CSS variables in the root selector. So if I go to the advanced tab and then custom CSS, here you will be able to set all your CSS variables. So you can set something like color primary and then set its value to maybe green. And then if you go to this heading or any other element and set its color to var color primary, then you will see that the color has been changed to green. And this is how you can set all your CSS variables in one place and use them on your site. I'll reset it and go to the body selector. Body selector is special because any style you set in the body selector will be inherited by all the elements on your site. So if I go to the typography tab and set a color of say blue, then if I add any element, then you will see that this element also has the same color. If I added some icon, then you will see that this icon also has the same blue color. So all the elements on your site will inherit any value you put in the body selector. I'll remove the icon and the text and then go back to the body selector and then typography. From here you can use the font family or font size field to set the same font family and font size value for all your elements. And also if you go to the background tab and change the background color, then this color will now be applied to your entire site. I'll reset the background color and also go to the typography tab and reset the color. Now for the next feature, we have global styles. For that, I'll click on any element here and you will see that this new button, it says edit global styles. You can activate it by clicking on this button. And now instead of seeing an ID or class badge, you will just see the name of the element. And this way you will know that instead of editing the element, you are now editing the global style of this element. So any style changes you make here will now be applied throughout your entire site. So if I say change its text color to something like this, red and add any other heading element, then this heading will also have the same style. And if I also go to the global style editor in this heading, then I change the color, then you will see that this color change is being applied to your entire site. I'll reset this and delete this heading and go out of the global styles editor mode by just clicking on it again. Now I'll add some buttons and maybe duplicate it a few times and then add some gap in this section, maybe 10 pixel. And now whenever I click on any button, you will see the global styles editor. So I can change the color or any other properties. So let's change the color. And this way you are able to change the color of all your buttons. But what if you want some of your buttons to be of a different type? You can also do that using this primary and secondary preset styles. I'll deactivate the global style editor first, and then when any of the button is selected, I can just apply this primary preset style to this button by activating this button. So this button now has the primary style. But to edit the primary style, I'll need to activate the edit global style button again. And now it will say the primary link button. So you'll know that you are now editing the primary style for this button. And now let's make this button color something different. And if I go to any other button and then add this primary preset, then this button will also have the same style. And the same thing is true for the secondary style. For any button, if I activate the secondary style and then edit it and maybe change the color again, then all the secondary buttons will have the same style. So if I select this button and then activate the secondary style, then this button will have the same style. You will also notice that if I activate any of the preset styles, then the other one will automatically be gone. So if I activate the primary style, then the secondary style will be gone. And if I activate the secondary style, then the primary style will be gone from this button. And this combination of global style and primary and secondary style option will allow you to build your sites without ever dealing with classes. But in some rare cases, when you do need to create some classes, BuilderAddon has something amazing for you. So if I go to this selector box and write some class name like say hero button, and if you add the class, then it will be as usual like adding a class. But instead, if you go to this button, then you can add this as a preset. But your presets are only applicable to the same element. So because this name is going to be applicable to all the buttons and not on any other elements, you can just remove this button part and now add it as a preset. Then you can style this preset. So maybe you want to add some underline to it. And now as you can see, the text has been underlined. And if you go to any other button and click on the selector box, then you will see that all your custom presets are already available under the custom presets heading. So you won't have to type the class name and then select the preset from here. It is already available here. You can just click on it to add it. You will also see that instead of saying a class or ID, it is now saying preset. Then again, you can remove this preset from this element by just clicking on the delete button. Now when this button is not available under your existing selectors list, you will see this single delete button here. And if you click on it, then it will prompt you to delete this preset forever. So you can now click OK to delete this. As you can see, this button's underline has been gone. And if I click on it, you will no longer see the hero preset. And this is how all your presets will work in BuilderAddon. Now I'll delete all these buttons. And go to the next feature, which is the headings. For that, I'll first add some headings. So I'll add a heading and then duplicate it 5 times. And then I'll change the heading tag for all these headings. So for this one, I'll make it H1, and then for this one, H2, then H3, H4, this is 5, and this one is H6, the last option. And now when any of these headings is selected, and you go to the typography tab, you will see the font size option. But if you activate the global style editor for any of these headings, then you will see an additional option called the font size scale, and it will come with a default value of 1.25. And to use it, you will first need to set a font size. So maybe I want the base font size to be 20 pixel. Now this 20 pixel will be applicable to all your H6 heading, and then the H5 heading will be this 20 pixel multiplied by this heading scale. So if I put any value in here, as you can see, all the headings are being adjusted accordingly. And this is how you can style all your heading tags without going through each one individually. Now even though this one has a font size scale of 1.12, you could set a different font size value at any of these different breakpoints. So maybe at this breakpoint you want a font size scale of maybe 1.04. As you can see, it's not working. That's because you need to set a font size value also. So I'll set the same value here, this 20, and you will see that it is getting adjusted. So for this one the value is different, and for this one the value is also different. You can also do the same for all these breakpoints, but I'll go back and remove the font size scale. But what if you want to style all your H3 tags differently? For that, you can select this H3 tag from your global styles panel. So if I select it, I'll have the advanced editor for this tag. So if I go to the typography tab and set a different font size, let's say 35, then you will see that this font size only applies to this heading. And if I added any other heading and set its tag to H3, then that heading will also have this style. I'll delete this and discuss about the next feature, which is the fluid typography. So I'll select any of the heading element or any text or any element really that has a font size. So when you select any of the element, below your font size boxes, you will see this fluid typography option. You will also see the same option in your typography tab. So under the font size option, you will see this fluid typography option. It's a one-click solution. All you need to do is put a check mark here. Now usually what you would do is go through every single breakpoint and set a different font size. So for this breakpoint, maybe you want this heading to be 40 pixel. Then at this breakpoint, you want it to be maybe 35 pixel. Then in this breakpoint, a different value, and then by this breakpoint, maybe you want it to be 16 pixel. And this is how you would do it normally. But with this fluid typography feature, you don't need to do that. You can delete any of these middle ones. Turn on this fluid typography feature, and that's all you need to do. So if you go to any of the breakpoints, you will see that the heading is getting adjusted. So in this one, you will see it getting smaller. In this one, it will be even smaller, and by this one, it will become 16 pixel. This fluid typography feature is also very flexible. So instead of setting it at these two ends, what if you wanted a different value at this breakpoint? You could do that too. You would just need to set a different font size in here. So if I set it to 30, then at this breakpoint it will be 40 pixel, and by this breakpoint it will be 30 pixel, and everything in between. Now you may think that because this breakpoint has a value of 30 pixel and this breakpoint has a value of 16 pixel, maybe from this breakpoint to this breakpoint it will also be fluid. But no, that's not what's going to happen, and for good reasons. For fluid typography to work, you will need to have two values at two ends. So from this one to this one, you have two values and it works as a set. And if you want to have your fluid typography work from this breakpoint to this breakpoint, then you will also need to set a font size at this breakpoint. So maybe if I set it to 25, then from this breakpoint it will start at 25 and then reduce slowly to 24, 23, then by this breakpoint it will be 16. And now you have two sets of fluid typography, one from this breakpoint to this breakpoint and one from this breakpoint to this breakpoint. Now I'll remove all these font sizes and delete these stylings. And also, as I discussed earlier about the global styles feature of your heading element, If you activate it, you will have the font size and the font size scale. But for this, you will also have the fluid typography feature. So if you enable this feature, then the fluid typography will be applied to all your headings. And this will work the same way as I described earlier. Now for the next feature, we have colors. So if I go to the global styles panel and colors, you will see a new option here called BuilderAddon colors. And in this folder, you will see an entirely new color palette. And this is a well thought out color palette. And it is so powerful that any site you have ever visited can be rebuilt using this color palette. But this color palette makes using your colors so much simpler that you don't have to think about selecting a color, then selecting between which variation to use where. This palette takes care of all that for you. And even though it has a lot of colors, you won't be needing all these colors. For example, this info, success, warning, danger, all these color ones you will only need for specific purposes. For instance, if you wanted to show a warning notice on your website, then only in that case you will use this warning color. Also, you will notice that people usually associate red with the danger color. So for the danger, we have the red color. But if you wanted to have a different color, you could set it from here. And you will also notice that whenever you go to any element and go to selecting a color, you will see the entire palette here. And even though you have all these options, you can treat these colors with just their first line. So for this line, this is your background color, and then this is your brand color, this is your accent color, and so on. And for each line, you will see two types of colors. One is for the background and one is for the foreground. And for the button, you will see the same thing. But instead of calling the next on foreground, it is called on brand. That's because this color is only supposed to be used on top of this color. Similarly, this foreground color is only supposed to be used on top of this color and nowhere else. And in most cases, you will need to be worrying about just these two lines, your background line and your brand line. And if you have a secondary brand color, or if you want to have a different color on your website, then maybe this accent color, and nothing else will be necessary. For example, your website background will have probably two different types of backgrounds. So for one section, you would want to have maybe a lighter version of a color, and then for another section, you would probably want to have a darker version. And that's why we have this strong, medium, and weak variation with all these colors. Now the background is pretty self-explanatory. You will use this color with all the section backgrounds and maybe in your body background in these places. This foreground color, you will use this with your heading elements, your text elements, and things like that. This brand color, you will be using them with your links, buttons, or any element really that you want to show differently. Or if you have a secondary brand color, then you could also use this accent color and this brand color interchangeably. Now what does the strong, medium, and weak mean? You will see that this color line is only supposed to be used on top of these colors. So this weak variation means that this color will have the weakest contrast on top of these colors, and the strong variation will have the strongest contrast on top of this color. That's why you will see that the strongest color in the background is white color and the strongest color in the foreground is the dark color. That's because they have the strongest contrast. And this contrast based palette will also help make your site more accessible. Now when would you want to use the weak version, medium version, and the strong version? Usually you will see that websites are using this medium foreground version for all the texts. So if you had a text, then for this text element you would set the color to be medium, and for all the headings you would want the color to be strong. So when the heading is selected, you will go to the global style and maybe set the text color to this strong version. And this is how you would use it. And maybe if you had some placeholders, then you would use this weak version. For the heading version, you can also use the weak version if you want to show your colors. For example, for the foreground color, if I selected a color here, maybe this red here, then you will see that the weakest version has this red color in it. So if you wanted all your headings to have this color, then in that case, you could use the weak color. Also, you will notice that your background and foreground colors are not exactly the color that you selected. For example, even though I selected red, it has a pure white version, then a little bit of red, and then a little more red. And for the foreground, the same thing, a black version, a little bit of red on top of the black, and a little more red. But if you go to any other color, for example in this brand color, if I selected red, then you will see that this color palette, the medium color is your exact same color and there are two other variations. And this is because it ensures that your website has a proper contrast, and it also helps with the next feature from BuilderAddon, which is this light and dark mode. And this is an automatic system, so you don't really have to do anything. Therefore, if your visitor's computer have a dark mode enabled, they'll see the dark mode, and if they have a light mode enabled, they'll see the light mode version of your site. But if you go to the dark mode, you will see how your website looks in the dark mode. Now of course, the background color didn't change. That's because you didn't set a background color in the section. So if I instead set a background color to maybe this medium one, you will see that now everything has been changed. You will also notice that even though the same red color is being applied, all the background colors are now white. But when you go to the dark mode, it instantly changes to black. And all your foreground colors are now changed to white. And the colors you set here, like this red color, is being inherited here, but you could also set a different color from here. Maybe if you wanted a different color, like maybe this blue, or maybe even if you wanted a different black, an entire black, then you could do that too. And for the foreground color, if you wanted white, you could do that too here. Also, the difference between these strong, medium and weak colors can be changed using this slider. So as you can see, if I reduce the value, all the colors start to look the same. And this is applicable to all the colors. But if I increase the value, the contrast becomes very apparent. This way you will be able to control the differences between each of the variation of these colors. I'll set it to default. And then if you now go back, you will see another option. And this option will allow you to enable dark and light mode for all your existing colors in this global colors panel. So the colors in this BuilderAddon colors folder are automatically light and dark mode enabled. But for all the other colors, you can enable using this checkbox. So when you enable this checkbox, you will see the same editing mode option that you see here. This editing mode option, light and dark mode. And using this option, you can see how your website will look on light mode and dark mode. But when you go back and this option is enabled, you will see this extra option. This is the default mode option. So if you build your existing site considering a light mode, then you will enable this light option. And if your primary design was built based on a dark mode, then you will enable this dark mode option. But again, this option is not applicable for your BuilderAddon colors. But I will not do that here. Also, even if you enable light and dark mode for your global colors, and then you set a color from here, instead of setting one from this global colors palette, then this color will not be converted to light and dark modes. It will only work for all your global colors. Now I'll talk about the next feature from BuilderAddon, which is its advanced CSS feature. So when any of the elements is selected, and if you go to the advanced tab, you will see this advanced CSS option. In here, you will be able to write any CSS, including their selectors. For example, in Oxygen, if you go to the custom CSS box, you can only write CSS in their property value limitation. So you can only set something like color blue or something like this. But you couldn't set something like H1, then style this element from here. You couldn't do that. That's why the advanced CSS feature is useful. You could write anything here. For example, inside this section, if you wanted to have all the headings to be a different color, then maybe set the H1 tag inside this selector and then set its color to maybe blue. And you will see that all the H1 headings inside this section are now blue. And this %selector% is basically a placeholder for whatever selector is now currently active. So in this case, this ID is active, so this selector will be replaced by this current ID. And if there was a class or any other selector, then it would be replaced by that class or that selector. And it would also contain the state. So if it had the hover state, then this selector will have been replaced by this selector and its state. And if you are at a different breakpoint, then it would take care of that too. Now with all the features that come with BuilderAddon, you can build your sites very fast. But still, if you are making a second site, then you would need to do the same thing again. And that's why BuilderAddon provides you with the export import feature. So if I go back to this global styles panel, you will see this export import feature. If I go to the selector panel, you will also see this export import option. And using this export import option, you can export your current settings, global styles, classes, and this sort of things individually to any other site. So now if I click on this export import button, you will see three options. One is to copy selector. So you can click on it to copy all the selectors. And then in the other side, you can choose from these two options, paste selectors or paste and update selectors. If you select the paste selectors option, then it will only import all the new selectors. But if you instead selected the paste and update selectors option, then it will import all the new selectors and also update all the existing selectors if there is a match. And besides exporting and importing all your selectors at the same time, you could also export import by folder. So for this folder, you can click on this gear icon and you will see this export folder option. You can click on it to copy all the selectors. And then on the other side, you would click on this export import button and then paste all the selectors. Then for this folder, you can also do the same. You can click on this export folder button and it will copy all the selectors. So say for example, if I had a selector here, like some selector, and as you can see, this selector is present here. Now if I copied this folder or maybe copied everything and then deleted it, okay, and then go to export import and then paste the selectors, allow, and then you will see that this selector has been pasted. And if you go to the global styles panel, you will see the same export import option here. But you will need to remember something, that in the export import option of your global settings, it will export import all the options that you see in here except for global colors. So all the options from here except for global colors and all your global styles, primary and secondary presets, all your custom presets and these things, but not your global colors. And that's because of how colors work in Oxygen. So if you go to the colors panel, you will see a separate export import button. If you click on it, you will see that instead of the regular two paste options, it also have an additional one. And at the same time, it will give you an warning saying if you are importing colors on a new site or trying to go back to how your colors were previously, select paste and override, which is this last option. So basically, if you are importing colors to a new site, then you could use these options, but this should be a safer option. But if you are trying to go back to how your colors were previously, you need to select this option. Otherwise, some of your colors will be broken. Besides these features, there are some minor improvements in BuilderAddon. Like for example, this scroll bar here. In Oxygen, you get a scroll bar like this one. But this doesn't really go with the UI, so I fixed it. And maybe some other minor changes. And there are a lot of details for all these features. Maybe I'll go into those details some other day. But this should be enough to get you started. And with all the features that I described so far, the one-click navigation, auto refresh, tag styles, global features, preset styles, custom presets, headings, fluid typography, color palette, light and dark mode, advanced CSS, export and import, you can build your sites very fast while also making your site very maintainable and very scalable, and also following all the best practices. This will be all for this video. Thank you for watching.